Transmedia for us is really just the idea of trying to tell story across as many platforms as we possibly can. It starts with kind of a central premise, and that is that viewers and audience are fragmented and they're in all sorts of different places, and they're on demand when they want to be wherever they are. And so for someone working within the traditional structure of a television show, the challenge becomes, how do you reach these viewers who are actually on these multiple platforms and not sitting in front of a TV at an appointed hour that a network wants them to sit in? So from that premise, we started to think about this idea of taking a show like Heroes and trying to figure out how to reach those people. And the way we do it is by using narrative that basically launches off of the mothership of the show. Uses the show as the hub from which all of these various tentacles can then feed off of it. And the real great sort of byproduct of transmedia is that it becomes kind of self-generating and self-sustaining when you realize the infinite sort of permutations that can happen once you start telling that much story. You start to realize that story threads can then fold back onto the mothership. In other words, you can start a story completely online that shows up on somebody's cell phone or shows up in somebody's email box. Content can then be created and then fold its way back onto the mothership of a television show. And it becomes a very dynamic, sort of 360-degree way of looking at story, where you used to just look at it as this very linear, flat, sort of two-dimensional thing. We wanted to air the pilot of the show with as few commercials as we could. So we were actually, the network was looking for a single sponsor. So they came to us with the idea that it could be Nissan and asked if we could figure out how to incorporate some Nissan product into our show. And you know, at the time, I was pretty adamant about wanting to have this premiere launch as a you know, without a lot of commercials. We had a long pilot, and so I decided that we needed to make this work. And like most things creatively, necessity becomes the mother of invention. And so once you realize, well, this has to work, we have to figure out a way for this to work. So we met Nissan fairly early on, and we had a discussion with them about what their product line was, what their expectations were for who they wanted to reach. And it was very early on in the conversation that we came up with this idea that became basically the basis for the entire product integration, that one of our characters would be destiny, basically, would lead him to actually come into possession of this Nissan Versa, which was a new model that they wanted to promote. And it became a real integral part of the story that this character had this particular car. The way he got it, the way he referred to it, the way they used the car, all became part of our story and looped in creatively with how we were thinking about the show. And so for us, it wasn't just a manufactured shell that we put over the narrative. It actually was integrated from within. And it's something that I think is a really a valuable kind of lesson as to how to look at this idea of product integration. Clearly there are products that have no, they've got no right being in a show like Heroes and just wouldn't fit. So there clearly has to be something that is there, that is a common ground. But the truth is, when we were backed into a place where out of necessity we really needed to make this happen, we began to look for creative ways to make it work, and that's how it happened. It becomes very important that anything that is attached to the brand, anything that is going to speak for the brand and speak for the show, has to be vetted through the creative forces of the show. If it isn't, then you really risk this very fragile relationship that you have with your audience. Authenticity becomes hugely important to I think, reaching an audience, and especially nowadays more than ever, when audiences are as fragmented as they are and as niche as they are. what you end up having is audiences that become very passionate about the one particular thing that they're very interested in. And so you no longer have a big sort of lazy, sloppy kind of audience out there that will be entertained by anything that's, you know, there are 3 networks on and I'm watching the one show that's on one of them, so it may not be just for me, but I'll sit here and watch it anyway. Those days are completely gone. And so it is now by appointment that someone finds you and by desire and passion that they find you. And so you therefore have fans who are passionate fans, and that cuts both ways, and consumers who are passionate consumers. And it cuts both ways. They can either love you or they can very quickly turn against you. And so it just becomes very important, I think, to try and stay very true to a narrative that connects with those people's heart or connects with their passion. And it's about knowing, it becomes about knowing who those people are.